Number 1. Nightmare Visitor. I had been transferred to another town. The company I was working for had relocated me into a nice brick house not far from my workplace. I was excited to embark on this new chapter in my life, but it wasn't long before I realized there was something wrong with my home. I was still living out of boxes and I had only the essentials available to me. My days were long and by the time I got home, I was completely exhausted. I'd often eat, shower, and fall asleep on the couch. One night, I had a strange dream. Someone was watching me while I was sleeping. I couldn't make out the features, but it looked like an older gentleman, but he was angry. But I quickly dismissed the strange dream. On the third night, the temperature in my room had dropped. I woke up shivering. I had a cold front come in during the night. I coughed and the smoky vapor emitted from my breath startled me. Something was wrong. First of all, it was icy cold in the room. More importantly, I felt as if someone was watching me. Had someone broken in? I sat up quickly. From the corner of the tiny bar in the den, a gray mist was slowly making its way across the room. I wiped my eyes, making sure I wasn't imagining things. By now, I was wide awake. The foggy mist seemed to move with a purpose. I was immobile, and the thick mist drifted towards the front door. I eventually got up to investigate. I followed its movement and opened the front door of my house. There was no one there. But that wasn't what surprised me the most. Outside, the air was warm and still. It was only cold inside my house. I checked the thermostat. The air conditioner wasn't even on. I couldn't explain the chill in the room. Eventually, things started to settle down. As the weeks passed, I settled into the house and eventually got myself a bed and moved into the bedroom. But one night, I heard footsteps. There was a rustling sound coming from the living room. Was it rats? The sound stopped, and I made a mental note to call an exterminator the next day. That night, I got up to get some water from the kitchen. As I left my bedroom, my eyes adjusted to the darkness. As I walked into the narrow hallway, I stopped in my tracks. Something was standing at the end of the hallway. It was a dark figure. My heart started to pound. Then the figure quickly moved away from the entrance. My hand scrambled to turn on the light. I walked into the living room and was expecting to catch the intruder. There was no one. I looked everywhere. I didn't have much furniture and there weren't too many places he could hide. The fact is, there was no one in the house. What was going on in my home? I wasn't dreaming or hallucinating. I know I saw a dark figure of a man. I didn't know who to ask or what to do about this strange happening. Eventually though, things started to settle down again and I forgot about it. Several months later, I was sleeping in my bedroom. I started to have the same strange dream again. There was someone watching me and my heart started to pound in panic. It startled me so much, I awoke. I glanced to the right of my bedroom. Coming out from the dresser mirror was the dark figure of a man. It was pitch black, darker than the night. He stood at the foot of the bed. I couldn't make out eyes or any facial features, but I knew he was staring at me. I was lying in bed, completely paralyzed. He then began to start walking towards me. I was so shocked I couldn't even open my mouth to speak. My mind raced, and I started to think of the Lord's Prayer. Suddenly though, and unexpectedly, a blue light from the bathroom window came on. The alley is right behind the bedroom and bathroom. I don't know if it was a car driving by or what had caused the blue light to come on, but as soon as the light entered from the window, the dark figure turned away from the light and walked right through the closed bedroom door. What had I just seen? It wasn't long before I moved out for good. I was never a believer in the paranormal, and I thought ghosts were simply a figment of someone's overactive imagination. I no longer scoff at people who claim to see ghosts. I never did find out who or what was in my house. Number 2. Don't turn on the light. Young Angelina occupied the room in the basement of her dorm as soon as she realized she would have to pull an all-nighter in order to prepare for tomorrow's final exam. Her roommate Jenna liked to get to bed early, so she packed up everything she thought she would need and went downstairs to study. It was 2 o'clock when she realized that she left one of the textbooks upstairs on her bed. With a dramatic sigh, she rose and climbed the stairs slowly to her third-floor dorm room. The lights were dim in the long hallway, and the old boards creaked under her weary tread. She reached her room and turned the handle as softly as she could. As she walked in, she noticed the room was filled with a strange metallic smell, her arms breaking out into chills. There was a strange feeling of malice in the room, as if a malevolent gaze were fixed upon her. She could hear Jenna breathing on the far side of the room, a heavy sound, almost as if she had been running. She figured Jenna must have picked up a cold during the last tense week before finals. She crept along the wall until she reached her bed, groping among the covers for the stray history textbook. Her fingers closed on the textbook. She picked it up softly and withdrew from the room as silently as she could. Relieved to be out of the room, she hurried back downstairs, collapsed into an overstuffed chair, and studied until 6 o'clock. She finally decided that enough was enough. If she went upstairs now, she could get a couple hours of sleep before her 9 o'clock exam. She eventually got to her dorm room. The first of the sun rays were beaming through the windows as she slowly slid the door open, hoping not to awaken Jenna. But her nose was met by an earthy metallic smell a second before her eyes registered the scene. Jenna's throat was cut from ear to ear, and her nightdress was stained with blood. 2 drops of blood fell from the saturated blanket with a drip noise that sounded like a leaky faucet. Scream after scream poured from Angelina's mouth. She couldn't stop. Within moments, other students had gathered in her doorway, and one of her friends gripped her arm with a shaking hand and pointing a trembling finger towards the wall. Her eyes widened in shock at what she saw. On the wall above her bed, written in her roommate's blood, were the words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" Number 3. The Woods. I have a cabin in Idaho on a lake where I spend a lot of my summers. It's pretty secluded and kind of in the middle of nowhere, but we do have some neighbors. I have a large family, but we never lock the doors at night. I've always wondered since I was a kid why nobody ever did, because I'm cautious and watch too many crime shows, and I always got the sense someday something horrible would happen. Anyways, one night while most of my large family went to sleep, I heard a banging on our front door. It was very loud and frantic. Naturally, I was frozen in fear. I was around 12 at the time, so I called for my parents. Eventually, they came downstairs to see who could be at the door. There was a man screaming, covered in blood. He had been drinking and he was very dazed and just out of it. He explained that he had just drove his car off the cliff and rolled into a nearby lake. He managed to get out and climb up the cliff, and our cabin was the first that he saw. That was strange enough, but in addition, the way he was acting was very unusual, like he was in trouble. He just kept insisting on wanting to come inside to make a call. My parents decided to let him use their cell phone. After he made the call, he left. The scary part, though, is that the next day we found out this man had literally murdered his girlfriend and was driving out of town. No wonder why he was acting so strange. Thanks guys, please share, comment, and subscribe for more videos. And remember, never forget to lock your doors.